I will not repeat anything that Josh has just said, but other than welcome to the first ever Global Matrix Conference. I'm Matthew Hodgson. I'm the project lead for Matrix, and I guess co-founder of the protocol and the project. And I would like to talk to you about the State of the Union here today. So, first of all, inevitably, we have to go back a little bit in time because, as Josh said, it is, for better or worse, our 10th birthday. So the story so far is that 10 years ago, on September the 7th, 2014, at least 4 of us were in TechCrunch Disrupt here at 6 o'clock in the morning, having done the first ever Matrix hackathon. You can see that Keegan is particularly awake at this point. Myself and Amandine apparently are just operating on fumes, and poor Eric has been abandoned in London today. But if you see Keegan around over there he is still today. And we basically put live Synapse, we put live the Matrix website. We told the world, hey, we've got to create this crazy thing to replace the phone network and email and everything with a real-time communication layer of the web. And then we stayed up all night building a VR system on top of it, which was really cool, called Animatrix. So that was where this all began. And then, 5 years later, in June 2019, having gone from the make it exist, we shifted to the make it work roughly right and get out of beta with Matrix 1.0. It turns out we have no photos of the day of Matrix 1.0 other than Eric again in the pub near the office, apparently celebrating with a gin and tonic. So that is literally the only evidence that we launched Matrix 1.0. But it was a huge shift. We went and got rid of self-signed TLS certificates. We changed state resolution so it generally works and at least wasn't exploitable. Lots and lots of other things. We turned on end-to-end encryption, for that matter, so that people could start using that for private conversations. And then here we are today, September 2024. So, Matrix 2.0. This is a project that has been going for quite a while now. We announced it at FOSDEM 2023, and the whole point here is to not just make Matrix work and make it work right, but make it work fast, to make it outcompete the mainstream apps on performance and usability. We do not want Matrix to be the weird open source thing that people use in public sector and you use if you're a geek, but let's face it, it's not as good as WhatsApp or it's not as good as Discord or Slack. We want the protocol to be able to support building apps that outperform, not just parity, but are better than the commercial alternatives. So we first of all shipped an implementation in the form of Element X and the Sliding Sync proxy at the Matrix Community Summit this time last year. Many, many bits were missing, like the ability to log in, or register, I should say. We could log in, but we couldn't register. Lots and lots of sort of gaps on it, but it showed the way that things were going. It was very much intended for existing Matrix Power users. So if you already had Element or Fluffy Chat or any other Matrix client installed, you could put Element X alongside it to have a play with the new performance and features. But it was very much intended only for existing Matrix Power users. We then gave an update back in February at FOSDEM, which was very much, it's coming, but it's not quite ready yet. But now, today, Matrix 2.0 is pretty much here. So, the whole point here Thank you. So the whole idea here is that, and this is very carefully worded, that everybody should be able to use the MSCs that make up 2.0 in reality. Not just Matrix geeks and power users and existing Matrix users, but new people setting up Matrix servers, new end users, and new normal users going and installing the app, or an app that is using Matrix 2.0 should be able to get up and running. So this is what is new today. So, what does this mean in practice? There are effectively 4 pillars in the end of what is going into Matrix 2.0. Probably the most important one is sliding sync, which is, well, I'll talk about these in detail, but it's basically fast, snappy sync. No more sitting around waiting for spinners for, in some cases, hours, particularly if you've been offline for a few days. I'm sure that everybody here has experienced the frustration on a Matrix client of going and setting it running, and then going and making a tea, perhaps going and starting another Matrix client to see which one syncs first, and all this sort of thing. With sliding sync, it is finally fixed. It is now implemented natively in Synapse, turned on by default since 1.114, and it has also been simplified. We'll talk about it more in a few. Then we also have what we are now calling next generation auth. This is the project previously known as native OIDC. We are no longer calling it native OIDC because A, nobody knew what it meant, and B, everybody thought it was about social login into Facebook, which is not the case. Instead, this is really just updating Matrix's authentication with loads and loads of benefits that I'll again talk about in a minute. Then the third one is finally getting native VoIP with matrix end-to-end encryption as a core part of the standard. This is now live in Element Cool and integrated in Element X and Element Web. Other implementations on the Famitly side also happening and elsewhere, and entirely new MSC stack I'll talk about for supporting it. And then finally, the fourth point, if you haven't noticed, on Matrix 2.0 kind of flexes back and forth as the years go by. It was originally faster joins, and then we shipped it, and it kind of wasn't Matrix 2.0 anymore. So nowadays, I'm saying that basically fixing encryption. Invisible encryption is both underway and specified in places too. So these MSCs have pretty much stabilized. The intention is that they will be on track for FCP, so final call for proposal to merge, without major changes. And it's at a point where other people can play with them and start implementing them proactively. They obviously aren't FCP'd, so they may still change, but there are not going to be any expected big shifts, as we have had in many places on basically all of these, apart from OIDC. Then we will bump the major version of the spec to 2.0 once they actually merge. So obviously, in an ideal world, I wish I was dancing around on stage here going and saying that, look, this is all FCP'd, it's merged, we've got 2.0, but the reality is that instead we have a stable set of implementations, we've got a stable set of MSCs, which we expect in their current state to be on track to become 2.0 proper. So let's talk about it in a bit more detail. Sliding sync. So instant login, instant launch, and instant sync, but now simpler. Because when we first did this, I over-engineered it in terms of really trying to go for the holy grail of instant sync. And basically the problem is that the implementation relied on the assumption that the server would know the correct order of the rooms that you're in. And the problem is that the server can't read your encrypted messages, obviously, and so it doesn't know the correct order of your rooms, and so it can't help the client out to sync rapidly. So we jumped through a lot of hoops to try to get around that and get the optimal path. It ended up getting more and more fragile and complicated. There was more and more risk of the client teams, particularly the Rust team, staging an intervention and abducting me or something. So instead, what we've done is to simplify it radically. There are no more sliding windows in sliding sync. It is more of a misnomer. Instead, the client manages the order of your rooms. The room list gets paginated in the background because clients generally do need to know all of the rooms. Has the same performance as original sliding sync, but it doesn't try to minimize bandwidth in the way that the original one did. It's basically a subset of it. And now it is implemented in Synapse, thanks to DNUM for sponsoring this and getting Eric Eastwood to be a legend and go and do all the heavy lifting to get it implemented there in Synapse. So as I said, this is now turned on by default since 1.1.4. Now, this is not the end for sliding sync. There are definitely refinements still possible, and one that I know that Eric Johnston of the Gin and Tonic is very enthusiastic about is paginating incremental sync. So at the moment, if you sign out, if you are idle for a while, or if too much traffic stacks up, it basically does an initial sync when you come back in, which is instant, but it then goes and paginates all your room list again. So you could end up chewing quite a lot of bandwidth going and pulling in all of your old rooms, whereas what we'd like to do in the future is to basically paginate incrementally both the initial and the incremental sync so that you don't have to do a full reset, what we call a SS reset, imaginatively, every time things fall behind. Boring edge case detail. The key thing to know is that we're not going to put it in the current MSC. This is a separate phase, no more creature feep or feature creep if you prefer, on the current MSC. So, demo. You think I'm going to demo this on Element X, don't you? I'm not going to demo it on Element X. I'm going to live dangerously, very dangerously, given the demo wasn't working 5 minutes before the talk. So let's see how this goes if I go and show it in Element Web instead. So this is a brand new PR that Dave Baker from the founding team and Keegan from the founding team have been working on over the last couple of weeks as let's see if we can go and squeeze this in at the last minute for the Matrix 2.0 keynote. What could possibly go wrong? Well, let's see what happens if I try to log in to native Simplified Sliding Sync on actualmatrix.org using my real account. It'd probably help if I could type my own password. Oh, that's a good sign. It's a problem with nerves. You can't type correctly. There we go. So, it should be instant. Oh, come on. Okay, that was about 4 or 5 seconds or something, as opposed to 25 minutes, which is my normal account time. I think I will just skip verification. And there they all are. So that's my account. So I can say, hello world, just showing off that this is real or whatever. And yeah, there you go. So I mean, that is not obviously merged. This is on a PR. It seems to be working, honestly. I mean, we're not aware of any actual limitations on it. Probably can do with a bit more performance, but this is the shape of things to come. And he says, seeing that the message order's wrong. It's pretty close, but honestly, this is where we're going, that Matrix clients, even on massive accounts like mine, should log in pretty much instantly and then resynchronize as needed. Right, I'm glad that worked. So, the sliding sync proxy. Many people over the last year have been running a shim, the sliding sync proxy, in front of their existing home servers in order to play around with element X ahead of time. We don't have bandwidth to support it. We've gone and implemented it natively in Synapse. We're very happy to work with other server implementers like Conduit or Grapevine or Dendrite to make sure that they can also speak it. The good news is that simplified sliding sync is a lot simpler to implement too. So what we're going to do is to deprecate the sliding sync project in a month. Obviously, other people can pick it up and fork it and maintain it if they want, and they're very welcome to. But on the core team building it, we just do not have bandwidth to do both. And then on Rust-SDK specifically, we're going to remove the old sliding sync code in 2 months. So Element X, for instance, and IMB and any other Rust-SDK based app will stop being able to talk to the sliding sync proxy after roughly that date. Unless, of course, somebody forks Rust-SDK to keep the code there. Again, it's because we have double the maintenance burden in Rust-SDK to handle the 2 paths right now. So this is intended to give folks time to implement SSS in more servers, to give people a chance to upgrade to a server that actually supports SSS, and also to burn their proxies with fire. So no more complaints about having to run a sliding sync proxy shim. Woohoo! Right, next up, OIDC, next generation auth. So the whole point of this is the observation, a wise observation, that Matrix is a communication protocol. It is not an authentication protocol. And yet we have the legacy authentication system, which is very similar to OAuth, the basis of OIDC, but doesn't benefit from any of the effort that goes into improving the security of the OpenID ecosystem. And frankly, we've already had some fairly embarrassing security issues on Matrix's authentication that were literally bugs that had already been solved years ago in OpenID Connect. And there are, frankly, other deficiencies in the system right now. If you want to see some gory details, head over to MSC 3861, and you can see a list of embarrassing things where, oh, yeah, if we'd been using OIDC, we wouldn't have that problem. So it also brings us a huge number of new features, including everything that the OIDC ecosystem keeps churning out. Really important that everybody in this room, please understand, it's not social login. It's not single sign-on. It's not sign in with Apple or sign in with Facebook or whatever. You can use it for that if you want, but the way to think of it is the next generation of the existing auth APIs, except using an actual auth standard rather than Matrix. So it's not just us doing this. XMPP has a ZEP up shifting to OIDC. The App Proto, Blue Sky folks also shifting over. I think the ActivityPub maybe sort of perhaps should be using it. So honestly, this seems like a sensible thing to do. Authentication is a massive pain in the ass, and we shouldn't have, what, a quarter of the spec dedicated to it today. And it gives us loads of features. Gives us QR login, which I might show you in a second. Gives us two-factor auth, multi-factor auth, passkeys. No more implementing matrix auth flows on every client and server. I've literally seen multiple matrix server implementations fail because the poor implementer got lost implementing our auth APIs. No, they didn't even get to the room DAG and sending messages. Instead, they got lost doing user interactive auth flows. It's a disaster. Users only ever hand their password to their server now. They don't just install a random matrix client from God knows where and immediately hand it their account password. It gives you consistent auth and account experience no matter what app you're in. So you can actually have a branded experience as you log in to remind you you're logging into your server. You're not really logging into a specific client. Then gives us things like access token, refresh that has been pending for years. It gives us OIDC scopes eventually, so I can say I want to log in here, but I don't want to let it read this room, or I don't want it to let it send messages. And finally, this will become a native integration on Synapse in future, and anybody else who wants to go and adopt it. A matrix authentication service is now available and usable for new deployments. On the migrations, and I should demo it. Let me do a demo. This one's probably also risky, but I already have a tab open for this. So here is my element.io account. So I should say the mass is not yet turned on matrix.org. I'll talk about it in a minute. So I'm going to deliberately demo this against my kind of workplace account that I don't use very much, honestly. And you will now see that on an element web, on a account that's been set up on a server that has mass installed, you have a link new device button. And if I go and actually screen share my phone, which occasionally kernel panics my laptop, so let's see how this goes. Oh, hello, everyone. There we go. So here is my phone. And here is an account. I'm already logged in on this, so let me first of all just go and log out. Sign out. Really? No, I do not want to install the software update right now. And you can see on my phone here, you got be in your element, sign with QR code. So I hit the sign in QR code. It says open element on another device to get a QR code. Hit ready to scan. And I'm going to just scan that QR code like so. And it prompts me to just double check that I haven't been shoulder surfed by putting that number in there. And then it flings us to mass. So this is the matrix-authentication-service, which says, hey, you're trying to log in on an iPhone 12 Pro Max on this IP address, blah, 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 blah. Do you want to give it permission to access your account? I say yes. And I've waited too long because I was faffing around. Let me quickly log in on that again. Sorry. So it gives you about 30 seconds to log in. And so if you waffle in the middle of it like this, then it may not be the super smoothest experience, so I'll just double confirm that, like so. Give it permission again. Go back here. And in case you're using an identity provider, there we go. And then it says help improve element X. Click go, and sure enough, you end up with your account here, like so. And you can go and look in, say, at the element X iOS room or wherever it might happen to be. And you even have your history in there too. And if I look at our internal element X room like that, you can say I've got my history in there too. So what you need to know is that it's gone and logged me in with both my end-to-end encrypted identity. I didn't need to tell it what my username was. I don't need to tell it what my server address is. I don't need to give it my passphrase. I don't need to give it my password. And so it's literally just scan the QR code and you're in. It's pretty cool. So that is an example of our brave new world of mass. So moving on, the next pillar. First of all, we should say we recommend this for new deployments. And the adventurous Synapse admin can try to migrate their existing Synapse server using the Syn2Mass tool. Now, there is a lot more migration work that can be done and will be done on this. So this is using, well, first of all, matrix.org hasn't migrated yet. We've got to migrate 9.3 million accounts over, which includes all the edge cases of all the social logins, all the bridged users, and sort out guest access. And so it isn't running mass yet. It will be by the end of the year. And as a convenience to Element X users, we've done a quick hack, which is to provide an off-spec registration helper available on matrix.org to let them go and register pre-mass. Honestly, Content and Hugh and IDC sort of Gestalt have been doing amazing work getting ready to this point. So it is coming, and we highly recommend people to play with this. I know that Sebastian, if he's here, is Sebastian Spaeth has gone and written an amazing blog post already on how to roll out MAS for a deployment pre-launch. So I should have linked to it here, but if you go and Google that, there's a lot of information about how to do that. Right, how am I doing on time? Anyone? I'm fine, Kim. Brilliant, thank you. How long do I actually have? I can't remember when I started now. Just keep going, or be careful what you wish for, because I'll just keep going for like 2 hours. So finally, or almost finally, matrix-RTC native VoIP. We're finally in a position to migrate from the old mix of one-to-one VoIP and Jitsi to just having a single native matrix VoIP standard. And that VoIP standard is called matrix-RTC. It has a shiny new MSC, MSC 4143, and the whole point is that it defines how you set up signaling for VoIP calls and conferences over matrix with end-to-end encryption. And it deliberately supports alternative back-end implementations for the media layer, similar to end-to-end agility, where we can switch our encryption implementations as needed. So there are 2 back-end implementations, of which one is the one where we've focused all of our efforts so far. One is using LiveKit as selective forwarding units or stream forwarding units to go and basically power conferencing. And then we separately have full mesh, where you don't have the conferencing server, but the clients go and talk directly to one another in a kind of peer-to-peer mesh. That isn't really hooked up on matrix-RTC yet. It's how we used to do the native VoIP conferencing in Matrix, but right now all the focus is just going on to making LiveKit work well. So this is implemented in Element Call, enabled now by default in Element X, Element Web and Desktop, also on Nightly Develop. Ideally, it should be there on the shipping web and desktop builds of Element Web. I don't think it's there yet because we still are figuring out the negotiation of how to decide whether to call people on Element Call or to use the legacy stack, but that is literally the only reason it's not turned on by default right now. And in terms of the layer cake here, we've got a lot of MSCs flying around, and I apologize that we have iterated a lot on the stack here. 4143 is the base one. Then we have 4075, which defines how ringing works. 4195 is a brand new one as of yesterday that defines how you actually use LiveKit against matrix-RTC. 96 is talking about how the m.call event is actually gluing it all together. And then we have 2 dependencies, which are soft dependencies. One on state events, which are owned by particular users, and 4140, which is for cancelled delayable events, or cancelable delayed events even, which is a really important part of matrix-RTC, because it basically says that if the call time's out, something needs to delete the event from the room, so it says that the call is terminated and there isn't a call going on anymore. And it's just a feature we did not have in Matrix. It's one that in the early days of Element Call in the third room, we battled against a lot, but we now finally have a good solution for. So as I said, these have been evolving a lot. Some of them are coming in right at the last minute, but the stack is now stabilized. It doesn't have any holes in it, and with a bit more polishing, should be on track to be FCP'd. So I will try to demo this in a way that isn't going to go horribly wrong. Yes, that was me logging in there. What I might do is to use, what I was hoping to do is to go and set a conference going for everybody in here. However, that might not be the best idea right now, so I might go and use one of the internal Element rooms if all the Element employees can go and help me demo right now. So sorry that it's not full audience participation, but, and by the way, nobody knows I was going to do this, obviously, so let's see how badly this goes. Let me go into the Element internal thing, and I'm going to just start an Element call room in new vector internal. So this is what it looks like now. This is iframing Element Call embedded natively into here. This is an end-to-end encrypted chat room. I'm going to hit the join button in there, and with any luck, you can see me all by myself in that conference. And here I pray that other people who work at Element are awake and live and listening enough that they will be able to join too, and it will actually work. Yeah, okay, people do need sliding sync in order to catch up. There is a Tom. There's a Florian. Hopefully we will even get video from them. Yay! Woohoo! Thank God for that. Awesome. So we've got a video from some folks in here. Hi, Will. Hi, Amandine. I can see here and Andy and Tom there too. I'm not sure I want to know why we're not seeing video from them. So this is using, and I'm sure it's because their video's turned off, by the way. What we're doing here is using the actual end-to-end encrypted state in the room for the call events in there. So we're properly going and leveraging Matrix's end-to-end encryption for once. I suspect what's going on, I'm not going to speculate why we're not getting video from some folks. We're probably, oh, there we go, it's just waking up. So it's using the LiveKit SFU behind the scenes in order to go and spread this out with end-to-end encryption. Yeah, I mean, this is working relatively well. It might be the slightly dodgy Wi-Fi in here. We've got too many people in a room or something like that, meaning that it's waiting for a keyframe before the video kicks in. But you get an idea that it is now properly integrated in there. So I'm not going to do more of a demo of this because I know that Amandine is going to be showing it off in Element X in the Element X launch talk later. Oh, was that Florian trying to screen share at me? And also, we've got 2 Matrix RTC and Element Core talks separately elsewhere. Thank you for helping me demo, folks. Right. Then, the final one, invisible crypto. The whole idea is that end-to-end encryption should be invisible on Matrix clients just as it is on WhatsApp, iMessage, or Signal. No, most people don't even know that iMessage is end-to-end encrypted. The encryption is so invisible. The only reason that Matrix isn't similarly invisible is because of the incremental transition to end-to-end encryption back at Matrix 1.0. Because we had this hybrid world where some clients don't have crypto yet, some clients still don't have crypto yet. You need to have all these additional warnings saying, ruh-roh, there's a big red shield because you've got unencrypted traffic in the room, or whatever it is. So in order to fix this, first of all, we've had to do a lot of work on improving the stability of the encryption. And it has literally become both memes and cartoons that Matrix's end-to-end encryption has not always been the most reliable over the years. I would like to thank BWI, the German military, who have spent a lot of money over the year going and funding us to really focus on nothing but improving the encryption reliability. And if you are now using a matrix-rust-sdk stack, we are very confident that it works as stably as possible for at least getting rid of bugs. Now, there are a couple of edge cases still where there are what we call sort of known unable to decrypt errors. Like if you log out all of your devices, then people no longer know how to encrypt for you. And I don't know, if you join a room, then if you don't have keys for the messages before you joined, it's still not decryptable. However, the actual bug-based stability is looking really, really good. And Keegan has an amazing talk coming up at some point tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, to tell all about the UTD hunt and how that worked, particularly around complement crypto, which is the integration test harness that he built in order to go and exercise every torture path possible to go and mitigate and able to decrypt stuff. So that honestly, this should feel like a step change. And if you're using a Rust SDK-based app like MNX or Fractal or IMB, and you're getting unable to decrypt errors, don't assume, it's just Matrix being crap. That is a real bug. Please chase us down, like individually, in person here, or file bugs very loudly, like new bugs, against the projects with all the logs and details, because we will jump on it like a pack of rabid ferrets until we've gone and solved whatever the issue is. So then, otherwise, the idea of invisible crypto is, first of all, well, it works, and then all devices should be verified or cross-signed by their owner. So we've got a new MSC 4153 that explicitly proposes excluded untrusted devices. So you no longer will get any weird warnings saying, there is an untrusted device in the room. Like, why do we even allow that? It's basically saying, you are being owned. No, you haven't gone and signed one of your devices, but hey, don't worry about that. Instead, we just shouldn't allow it in the first place. However, this is a big change. This is a breaking change, and when it lands, you will not be able to encrypt to or decrypt from these weird devices, which the owner could never bother to prove were theirs. So we're going to have to make a lot of noise over the coming months as we roll this out. Next steps, no more gray shields. So again, weird shields on apps saying authenticity could not be determined on this device. What does that even mean? Well, it basically is papering over some gaps in the protocol. So we have 2 MSCs to fix this. Authenticated backup that says you can trust the data that your backup sends you, so you don't need to warn that it might have been tampered with by the server. Also, going and making sure that you can trust deleted devices rather than saying, this message has been sent by a deleted device and we've forgotten all about them, so we don't even know whether they were you or not. So again, that has been being addressed too. Then we hope to work on dehydrated devices, modulo funding. which is MSC 3814. So this stops you getting UTDs if you do log out everywhere. You have the option of basically encrypting a device and storing it on the server so that when you go and log in the next time, you can dehydrate it and pick it up and keep using it and get its messages. It's a security trade-off, but for many people, it's very, very useful. Then sharing keys when you join a room or a space, very sensitive and awkward situation and subject, because if you get this wrong, it could be a major security problem if you have some uninvited person turning up somehow who is able to get at keys for a history before they joined a room. Sounds like a bad idea. So we really need to rework and think carefully about how to do that correctly. And then finally, we want to get to trust on first use. So you warn when user identity changes, even if you haven't verified them. And I personally, and I haven't really spoken to the team about this, would like to get to key transparency. So a bit like WhatsApp and iMessage, you already run these key transparency servers, which basically publish some kind of ledger saying, this is Matthew's public key. And if I suddenly turn up as a new, under a new public key, it looks a bit suspicious. It's a pretty basic thing. It's like TLS has its certificate transparency systems. We could literally run instances of Trillion, the Google key transparency server, so that people could publish a ledger so you can see if people are impersonating each other. So it's basically trust on first use, backed up with an assertion for key transparency, but decentralized. I really hope we can get to it soon. Finally, bonus! Authenticated media. This isn't really Matrix 2.0, given it already shipped in 1.11. This is a really important trust and safety improvement to stop Matrix being abused as a massive binary pastebin dump. And so we've expedited pushing this out as a trust and safety requirement. It requires users and servers to provide an authentication header in order to view media. We enabled it on September 4th on matrix.org after announcing it 2-3 months earlier. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. Overall successful, I think. However, adding the auth header is much more painful than anticipated on web, and I apologize to Firefox, incognito, or private browsing mode people who turn out not to have service workers and therefore can't use authenticated media as a result. Also, the header does not play well in practice with CDNs. So it's rolled out, it's generally working. Thanks for everyone's patience, and thanks to everybody who updated updated their apps and their servers for it on a fairly tight schedule. Obviously, there's scope to iterate on this going forwards. There's already an MSC, I think, or at least an issue out for a next iteration of it. But thank you basically for everybody bearing with us. Overall, the improvement in stopping people using Matrix as a binary dump is worthwhile. So, welcome to Matrix 2.0. You can try all of this on beta.matrix.org, which is a server that runs on Element Cloud that goes and has all of the experimental knobs turned on, including matrix-authentication-service. Or, of course, you can just run it yourself right now. It is rolling out incrementally on matrix.org. We have sliding sync. We have element cool. We don't have mass yet, but we will do by the end of the year. So, hello, everybody. Spread the word, please. Matrix 1.0 has ended up with its fair share of complaints. We have a lot of fans, we also have a lot of haters, and whether that is due to client UX issues, encryption problems, Synapse being too resource-heavy, this is our collective chance to change the narrative. Please come out of this room screaming to the hilltops about how this is a good time to give Matrix another shot, and that performance with sliding sync is solved, usability with the next generation of clients is solved, and what's more, you can actually play with it. It's not just random geeks on Hack and Use enthusing about it. So Matrix 2.0 is not just for power users and early adopters anymore, it's for all of us. Meanwhile, in Matrix, here are the traditional graphs showing the total users reported by the Synapse, Panopticon, phone home stats. I'm not entirely sure what happened then. It probably means that matrix.org crashed for a bit. But total federated about 170 million. Monthly active users with hovering around the 4 to 4.5 million. It's been a little bit flat this year, but if you look over previous years, like July 2022, you tend to get a dip in the summer, and then it recovers towards the end of the year, and then the same thing happens there. And we're basically at the point where in September, hopefully, we come out of the dip, particularly with Matrix 2.0 now here. As Josh said earlier, funding continues to be tough. The foundation is not cash positive, even for the small set of activities that we do. This conference is not cash positive. Trust and safety is obviously a particular challenge. we have people on the foundation working on it. We have a lot of volunteers contributing. We need more folks working on this full time. We can only do that if we can pay them. The economics of Matrix as a whole are frankly still not clear. Open source economics are not clear in general. It really feels like people see open source as a resource to be exploited. I can use this for free. I don't have to pay anybody anything. Woo! Rather than a resource to be nurtured and funded. Human nature at its most human, shall we say. Please buy Matrix solutions from vendors who financially support the underlying open source projects or directly support the foundation yourself. Go to matrix.org/support and everybody sign up here. If you're here and you're not a supporter, you're doing it wrong. So what's next? State resolution redux. So you probably saw that state res was not mentioned in Matrix 2.0. There are still edge cases which need attention. There's some really interesting work going on across the community, for instance, from Robin, who works on the Element Core team, proposing entirely different approaches to how state resolution might work in future. I cannot wait, modulo funding, to actually go and deep dive into that. We need to finish off the invisible crypto work that we've started. Lots more performance work that can be done. We found a hilarious bug in Synapse yesterday, where it turns out there is a bug in, and always has been for like 2 years, a bug in the pipeline that chucks JSON down an HTTP socket, which turns out to be quite important in Matrix, and the back pressure is broken so that the pipeline will stall for potentially 3 or 4 times the duration it took to create the request response. So we might be able to get a cheeky 3 or 4x improvement in Synapse performance like that by going and fixing this JSON bug. Then lots of more usability improvements, both in the protocol at the crypto layer and the sort of sync layer. Obviously, we need to get running on account portability, multi-homing accounts, but that is stuck due to funding completely at the moment. And then, where are we 5 years from now? Who knows? Matrix 3.0, we've non-ironically been talking about 3.0 as what do we do next in the big sort of 5-year plan. One option could be that as we went through make it work right, make it work fast, perhaps Matrix 3.0 is make it safe. Focus everything on trust and safety. An alternative could be MLS in Matrix. Perhaps we should move on from the double ratchet, figure out how to do a really tight integration with MLS. Perhaps we hand over cryptographic group membership to MLS rather than Matrix, so that and the crypto basically, well, you have cryptographically constrained groups to avoid the server messing around with the membership of your rooms. Another option, frankly, could be to converge with Mimi. And this was my hope, working with the Mimi IETF working group, and we pitched it to them. Unfortunately, there is not enough consensus from people who want to build the next Matrix in IETF that they should actually try to converge with Matrix, but we could do it anyway. So place your bets. As a reminder, friends do not let friends use proprietary chat services. If you benefit commercially from Matrix, please support the foundation. Run a server, get an enterprise one from a vendor who supports the foundation, build bridges bots to your services, build something cool on Matrix, follow us on Mastodon or one of the other 26 social networks, and spread the word. Thank you very much.
Some questions?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Matthew. We are slightly behind schedule already, but I think we can manage just a few questions.
Probably got time for one question, if anyone has one.
Maybe.
Everyone's fleeing in horror.
Here's one.
What about the bridges with the when you can't sign on? You can't get into a room without having like the verification. What about bridges that don't do that?
So the question there was, how do we handle bridge traffic in a world where everybody has to be verified? And it is one of the things which is stopping that MSC from landing. Particularly Tullia's bridges have got some really fancy stuff going on where they do encryption, but they go and share the same identity for all the encryption. We probably need to make some changes to how cross-signing works for this special case so that the bridge can basically sign off on its users as being allowed to impersonate the bridge. and then that would be enough to verify them and make the warnings go away. In the meantime, you get red warnings everywhere. If your bridge isn't encrypted, then I don't think we're doing anything to stop unencrypted traffic coming into rooms. It will just have a big warning saying, sorry, this is unencrypted. Wonderful, geeky question. Thank you. Time for another?
Let's try a last one.
Okay, very quick.
And I just address it. We have some questions on stream in the chat as well, so I guess you can take a look at the chat afterwards.
I've heard about the chat system.
Here's a quick question. So I see that it's long polling for the syncing. Have we any plans for WebSockets for the syncing?
Okay, so that was, we're still doing long polling. Are we going to move to WebSockets? And the answer is probably not. I mean, WebSockets don't buy you that much in our experience. It's never been a big performance issue for us. If we look at all the things wrong with Matrix, at no point are we profiling and saying, oh my God, we're spending too much time long polling. And so architecturally, it's a bit nicer, but WebSockets have a whole bunch of other problems, and they're still not supported in some environments. So it's pretty low down the to-do list. Like Rich here went in, his first thing when he joined the project 9 years ago was to write a WebSocket proxy for Matrix and to write an MSC of how that would work. And it worked, and it was amazing, and absolutely nobody has used it in 9 years. So that shows you how much excitement there is for WebSockets on Matrix. But if it changes, then we might. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Matthew.